For my project, I decided to discuss Charlie Sheen and his struggle with mental health. It's the second prompt that was offered on the study guide sheet. Before we dive into Charlie Sheen specifically, I think it's important to understand the brutal reality of being famous, especially from a young age. Child actors have a tendency to feel the need to be perfect, oftentimes from trying to make their parents proud or trying to live up to the standards of their favorite celebrities. We often hear of children that are brought up in show business resulting to drugs and alcohol to cope with their ongoing stress, and usually leading to a very strong substance addiction. Wanda Brahens Harrell writes in Psychology Today, because of the nature of show business, child actors are often exposed to drugs, alcohol, and sex at an early age. At the same time, young actors must constantly cope with rejection, jealousy, self scrutiny, obsessive thoughts, and the nonstop need to be perfect. These children are at high risk of becoming emotionally unstable and of becoming drug, alcohol, or sex abusers. Children at different ages display behavioral changes that might indicate that they are at risk. Those between the ages of 2 and 8 might exhibit the following signs of stress: aggression, depression, crying, anxiety, clinging, and temper tantrums. Indication that teens are troubled include poor grades, change of friends, isolation, distancing from family, oversleeping, drug or alcohol abuse, eating disorders, cutting, lying, and keeping secrets. Being a child actor in today's world is especially hard with social media. From the time they become famous, these kids are constantly scrutinized online, and most of them have trouble dealing with the constant negative feedback they're receiving. It takes a massive mental toll on these kids before they've even had a chance to really figure out who they are to themselves. This is also applicable to anyone of any age who has suddenly found themselves in a position of even the slightest bit of fame. Saybrook University Donna Rockwell writes, developmentally, the celebrity often goes through a process of first loving, then hating fame, addiction, acceptance, and then adaptation to the fame experience. Becoming a celebrity alters the person's being in the world. Once fame hits, with its growing sense of isolation, mistrust, and lack of personal privacy, the person develops a kind of character splitting between the celebrity self and the authentic self, as a survival technique in the hyperkinetic and heady atmosphere associated with celebrity life. So, why is this relevant to Charlie Sheen? Charlie Sheen began acting at an early age of 9 years old, starting off as an extra in the renowned TV film The Execution of Private Slovic, which starred his father. As a teen, he produced and directed a slew of low-budget film shorts with childhood friends and future stars Rob Lowe and Sean Penn. Charlie had a reputation as a bad boy in Hollywood. His reputation quickly escalated as he grew older in the industry and fell to drugs, alcohol, and aggressive spending habits such as amassing thousands of dollars in tabs at strip clubs around Hollywood. In 1990, when Sheen first attends rehab, is the start of a long 25-year struggle for Charlie. He only spent a month in rehab when he first went, claiming once he was out that he would attend a 12-step meeting program, which he never followed through with. Between 1996 and 2009, there was a very repetitive pattern of drug abuse and domestic assault, starting in 1996 when he was arrested for assault of his former girlfriend, Brittany Ashland. Again in 2006 when he and Denise Richards got divorced after she claimed he verbally and physically abused her. And then in 2009 when he was arrested on suspicion of assault of his former wife, Brooke Mueller. He finally makes a decision to check himself into rehab as a preventative measure for the security of his career. Despite this smart decision on Sheen's part, later that year he was carried out of a hotel room and hospitalized. Then in early 2011, he was taken out of his home on a stretcher due to abdominal pains from an almost fatal overdose of his medication, and goes back to rehab. Only a month after checking into rehab, he checks himself out, claiming that the AA manual was written for normal people, not people with tiger blood, Adonis DNA. This leads perfectly into how his mental health has contributed to these poor past decisions and how it continues to affect him. Many people have theorized that Charlie Sheen's behaviors are very similar to those related to bipolar disorder. The Psychology Today article, Charlie Sheen, Wild Warrior Troubled Man, written by Deborah Sereni, talks about Charlie's repetitive behavior. Sereni discusses how his repetitive patterns of drug abuse, money spending, and domestic violence are causes of more substance addiction, but something deeper in Charlie. Although Sereni had not treated Sheen herself, She theorizes that even when he is sober, he is displaying these extreme shifts in mood, which are attributing to his constant relapses in drug abuse. In 2015, Sheen opened up to the public that he had been diagnosed with HIV and that he was 2 months sober. Shortly after the news broke, he met with Dr. Oz. On the show, he openly talked about how he had stopped taking his HIV medication, despite how dangerous it could be for his health, and was pursuing different forms of treatment. He also went on to tell Dr. Oz that he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but would not say by whom, and was no longer taking his bipolar medication because he did not want to be identified as someone with a mental illness. The Body, the HIV/AIDS research writer Drew Gibson discusses in his article, Off His Meds and Away from Reality, Charlie Sheen's struggle with HIV and mental health, his concern with Charlie no longer taking his bipolar medication. Gibson shares in the article that he himself is a recovering drug and alcohol abuser and has been taking bipolar medication his entire adult life. He expresses worry about Charlie's high risk of relapsing without his bipolar disorder medication. Although Gibson had not treated Sheen directly, he is speaking from personal experience, the small chance Sheen has of not relapsing given his past behavior. How it relates to the information in Chapter 17. Starting off with the unusually extreme and problematic features that were described by psychiatrist Kurt Schneider. Schneider says there are two defining features of personality disorder. The first is that a person exhibits an unusually extreme degree of one or more attributes of personality. The second fundamental criterion for a personality disorder is that the associated extreme behavioral patterns cause major problems for the person or for others. Sheen's actions over the 25-year span directly fit into both the defining features described by Schneider. Sheen went through a series of extreme behaviors, diving deep into his drug addiction, then making the decision to check into rehab, only to check out shortly after, saying it was not for him. He also went on to tell people that he would attend meetings, which he actually never did. Also, his display of abuse towards his wives and girlfriends over the years. He must have been a charming person for 3 different women to have married him, only to then receive mental and physical abuse from him at such an extreme level that they got restraining orders against Charlie. This also shows the second feature in that his behavior physically and mentally hurt his wives and family. His family had asked him multiple times to attend rehab, which he either ignored or left early, not getting the treatment he needed, causing pain and worry in his parents. Lily S., Michelle P., and Abby E. wrote a psychological analysis of Charlie Sheen on Prezi.com. They came to the conclusion that Sheen not only showed bipolar disorder traits, but also extreme narcissism. Upon farther looking into this, I agreed with their analysis. In the textbook, they discuss the narcissistic personality disorder, which says, the individual with narcissistic personality disorder believes, sometimes against all evidence, that he or she is a superior being and expects recognition for this. Sheen has constantly demonstrated this throughout his life. The first example would be when he sued his hit TV show, 2.5 Men, for $100 million after he was fired, even though he was fired after countless arrests for abusing his partners and constant relapses. He thinks that he is above the standard human and that rules do not apply to him. Sheen also stated in an interview from 2011, after checking himself out of rehab, the Alcoholic Anonymous manual was written for normal people, people that aren't special, people that don't have tiger blood, Adonis blood. The textbook also discusses how people with narcissistic personality disorder feel that they are the only person on earth who matters. I have listed a few of Sheen's memorable quotes to give you an idea of how Sheen viewed himself in comparison to the rest of society. Sheen says, I have a disease. Bullshit. I kid it with my brain. I'm tired of pretending I'm not a total bitchin' rock star from Mars. You can't process me with a normal brain. I'm on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available because if you try it, you will die. Your face will melt off your body, and children will weep over your exploded body. Thank you very much.